It's all eyes on Paris this morning as the Paralympic opening ceremony takes place under clear skies along the Champs-Élysées. Close to 160 Australian athletes will be among the more than 4,000 competitors at the Games, which organisers are touting will be the most spectacular in Paralympic history.
Covering it all for us is our very own Charles Brice, who joins us live from Paris. Charles, bonsoir, and the weather gods are smiling on this opening ceremony.
They are, Michael. It's a balmy 25 degrees here at the moment. Perfect conditions for an opening ceremony and perfect conditions coming up for competition over the next 10 days. The atmosphere here tonight has been absolutely amazing. We saw some 6,000 athletes and officials walk along the Champs-Élysées into the Place de la Concorde, where they soaked in the atmosphere. Some athletes doing it for the very first time. It's quite fitting that the athletes were along the Champs-Élysées. Of course, in Greek mythology, Champs-Élysées means place of warriors. So the athletes are no doubt warriors in themselves and will be putting themselves through their paces over the next 10 days. The opening ceremony took quite a different look to what we saw at the Olympics a few weeks ago. Of course, athletes there were on boats on the Seine. That would have been a huge logistical and accessibility trouble getting athletes on boats, and it almost makes it a little bit more personable seeing athletes go into the makeshift stadium. There were some 50,000 people that were able to watch on. Not all Australian athletes were part of the opening ceremony. Quite a number of them opting to stay at the Athletes' Village to watch on from there. One of those was Angie Ballard, one of the Australian team captains. She's competing on day 3. She knows her preparation better than anyone else, so that's why she took the option of staying put in the village. One person who was, of course, there was Madison de Rozario, of course, our flag bearer, along with Brandon Hall. Both of those athletes are competing very early on. Brandon competing tomorrow, Madison on day 2. Madison, though, speaking with her today, she said she wouldn't miss it for the world.
I would have made this decision every single time. Brendan's racing day 1, I'm racing day 2, so we're both a bit early in the program regardless. But it's such an enormous honour and privilege. So I think even though, yes, you're conscious that it has an impact on how you may have to prepare for the rest, you kind of just put all those pieces where they need to go and you put a plan together and you get to represent Australia at opening ceremony the best way you can, and then you get to represent Australia the best way you can out on the track 2 days later.
And Charles, as excitement builds, there's been a massive uptake in ticket sales.
There's been huge demand, Bridget. 2 million tickets have already been sold. That's out of an allocated 2.5 million. So the demand is there. The people are wanting to watch these para-athletes on the world's biggest stage. And it says a lot for the Paralympics in themselves and just how well organised it is here, and just how far the Paralympics have come in recent years. And the Paralympic movement in itself has certainly been noticed with none other than Kate McLoughlin, Australia's chef de mission.
That Parisians and so many Australians who've come across here are filling those stadia will be brilliant for the athletes. They can harness that energy from the crowd, and you know, from a Paralympic movement perspective, it just shows how far we've come. The fact that there are so many people willing to pay money to see our incredible athletes is wonderful, and hopefully all Australians back at home will continue to support them as well.
The Paralympic movement certainly was not also lost on Madison de Rozario. Speaking with her today, she competed at her first Games when she was just 14, and she said over the years it has changed so much, and now going into an Olympic Village, she said that the disability was the least interesting thing about athletes these days. Have a listen to what she said about that Paralympic movement.
Excited that anyone who's debuted here in Paris, their Paralympic experience is going to be so different to mine. They're not going to see what it was like, in 2008 in Beijing when I started, when there was a very medical lens put to a sporting event, whereas now it's high performance sport, and we're seeing athletes and the expectations that we turn up purely as athletes, and that's an enormous shift. And I'm so excited for what the future of Paralympic sport looks like if that's the starting point for our current athletes.
So, Charles, talk us through how much the Paralympics have changed in recent years.
Yeah, well, the Paralympic Games themselves for people with disabilities started post-World War II, about 1948. The first Games were in the 50s. They weren't the official Paralympics. They started in 1960 in Rome. And since at those Games, 23 countries were represented. Some 400 athletes were at those Games. And year on year, it has just improved, and the numbers have grown so much. Nearly 5,000 athletes here in Paris themselves, and with those crowd numbers, it's going to be some of the busiest Paralympics that we have seen. Of course, 60 debutants competing in front of the biggest crowds that they have in their career, and you also have to think of those athletes that debuted in Tokyo as well. Of course, no crowds there, so it's going to be such a thrill for those athletes competing on the biggest stage with the biggest crowds, and hopefully bringing home some gold.
To Queensland now, where detectives have renewed their appeal to the public for help to find a man who poured hot coffee on a baby at a Brisbane park. Reporter Ariana Levy joins us now from Brisbane. Ari, such a horrific incident. What has happened since?
Yeah, good morning, Michael. It's certainly come as quite a shock to so many in the community who were just wondering how exactly this could unfold at a local park, especially here in Brisbane. Now, the latest from police is that they have released new images of a man that they believe is involved in this incident. Now, he's being described as in his 30s to 40s, of proportionate build with tan skin, and at the time he's being described as wearing a black hat, glasses, checkered shirt, as well as shorts. But this all really unfolded on Tuesday at around midday at Hanlon Park, which is in Stones Corner. A young baby boy, 9 months old, was with his mother at the time and a group of friends when the group was approached by an unknown man who then allegedly poured hot boiling coffee on this young boy. He then suffered significant burns and was taken to hospital where he was treated and underwent surgery, and we have confirmed that he is now in a stable condition. But police have said that they believe this is an unprovoked but deliberate act, and one detective that's worked on the case, he says that in his 35 years on the force, he's never seen a callous and horrendous act as this, so it's been quite a concern. Now, police have set up a mobile police beat at Hanlon Park on Stones Corner, where they are calling for anyone that is a witness or has CCTV footage around the local area to please come forward. They're also collecting and gathering further forensic evidence, but they say that they will be working around the clock on this case to bring justice for this young boy who continues to make a recovery in hospital. But again, Michael, it's not only just shocked people here in Brisbane, but people right across the country.
Honestly, hot coffee on a baby. Words fail me. Ari, thank you. OK, to other news now. The Australian energy market operator has downgraded its warnings about the risk of power shortages in coming years. In its latest forecast, the agency says the outlook has improved thanks to new generation and storage projects. AEMO is also predicting lower growth in energy consumption than previously forecast, in part due to a reduction in the expected uptake of electric vehicles, lower economic growth and an improved outlook for rooftop solar generation.
Economists don't expect the Reserve Bank will cut interest rates anytime soon, as yesterday's slowdown in the pace of inflation was largely expected. Annual headline inflation fell to 3.5% in July from 3.8% in June. The RBA's goal of 2.5% is not forecast until late 2026 or early 2027.
Authorities are calling yesterday's winter fire emergency in Sydney's southwest a wake-up call about the ever-present threat of bushfires. The fast-moving grass fire was whipped up by strong hot wind gusts and was quickly elevated to emergency warning level. While there was some property damage, it appears homes were spared.
The inquest into the Wieambilla shootings is expected to wrap up today after 5 weeks, with victim impact statements set to be heard. The probe has been looking into the deaths of constables Matthew Arnold and Rachel McCrow and local man Alan Dare. The officers were killed by extremists while responding to a routine job at the rural property, and Dare was shot when he went to investigate.
Okay, let's see what the markets have done overnight. The Dow down slightly, our futures are down. The Aussie dollar just under 68 US cents. Brent crude down about $1 in value, and gold this morning is worth 2,502 US dollars an ounce.
And paddle boats will return to Lake Burley Griffin in Canberra from this weekend after the National Capital Authority reached an agreement with a new operator. The previous operator suspended the service last year, saying the boats were too old to maintain. There'll be 9 new boats that are larger and include sun protection as well. That's a nice way to spend your summer.
Fantastic. I've always wanted a paddle boat on Lake Burley Griffin. Obviously, they've been out of the water for a while, but they're coming back.
Now you've got shade.
I know. I used to dragon boat when I lived there on Lake Burley Griffin.